Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Lila Bennett, the Executive Director of the Journey to Recovery. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you were just on the show, but as a civilian.
Yes.
Last week you were on talking about some writing you are doing, a book you've written, and a online
coaching
blog.
Oh, in the blog, yes.
Right.
Yep.
But this week you're on to talk about your other favorite topic, Journey to Recovery. First of all, what is the Journey to Recovery?
So Journey to Recovery Community Center is it's a peer-based coaching support center. And we're right across from the hospital. Basically, what we do is we help people who are struggling with substance use or any kind of addiction. But by and large, like in this area, we're helping people with alcohol and drugs, stopping using or looking at why they're using, sort of healing the underlying factors that drives people to get into troubling behavior with substances. We're right across from the hospital, which is really important because, especially right now with this opioid epidemic, people are overdosing at record rates. And so being able to be very close to the hospital, go over, we bring our coaches over and meet people sort of in that first moment of crisis and give them some hope. What's cool about what we do is we're not clinicians, we are not counselors. We are trained peer support recovery coaches. And the difference is every person who works at Journey to Recovery has some sort of experience with addiction. So either like we have a family member, or we grew up in a household with alcohol or drug use, or we're recovering ourselves. Right. And so what that does is it just gives it like sort of puts you on an equal playing field with the person who's struggling, and helps them see that like you can get better, that there is hope, that the stigma around being a drunk or being nobody likes the word junkie, but we need to say it out loud so that people stop saying it. Once you see that you can change your life, it does help people get better.
Right. So how long has the Journey to Recovery been around?
Journey to Recovery began in 2014. It was this area was the last area in the state of Vermont to have a peer-supported recovery center. So there's 10 other recovery centers throughout the state. And we, up here, it's sort of like the Northeast Kingdom gets forgotten a lot of the times. Yeah. And, we have a more rural population, so it's harder to prove sometimes that will make the same impact. So we miss out on funding and all kinds of stuff. But in 2014, a group of people came together and said, hey, we need this in this area. And so the state began to listen. 2014 came, a small recovery center formed, and it was in down on 3rd Street. And it stayed there until we moved last year. We moved the center in 2021 to across the street from the hospital.
I know people who are either opiate users or opiate abusers.
Yep.
Or some people who are trying to recover. But we know so much now about the dangers of it. It's kind of like smoking. At one time, smoking was like the cool thing.
Yeah.
And to a degree, maybe people didn't know the dangers of it, but now, I can't even fathom going into the store for your very first time, say, I think I want to smoke cigarettes, and laying down $10 for whatever it is for a pack of cigarettes.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a multitude of reasons that people don't smoke as much as they used to, including the fact that we know the dangers of it. Is the same thing happening yet with opiates? Where do you think the curve is starting to be bent now because there's less people getting involved? Because you have to be pretty out of touch if you don't now know the dangers. I'm not talking about the current users, but is there?
Well, it's the same but different. And I do want to say that we help people quit smoking or tobacco, vaping. That's a big part of what we do. So if anybody out there is watching this and you are addicted to nicotine and you don't know how to stop, you can definitely call us or send us a message on Facebook or check out our website. We know how to help. It's really hard, but you can do it. The difference, it's very interesting. So like smoking seemed very harmless, right? And it's like you have a cigarette, it doesn't like mess you up. It's like you have a cigarette, a little relaxation, off you go until you're addicted, and it's really expensive and it's bad for you and people have cancer and et cetera, et cetera. But opioids, it's different because it's definitely affects your whole life, and it affects you for hours. But the way that people get addicted is very different than how people would get addicted to cigarettes. In the 90s, when I was in high school, that was sort of the revolution of like the pill, like the magic pill, where people all of a sudden were starting to realize that you could get a pill for depression. And the pill culture really is what caused the beginning of this epidemic. Was that we are, as a species, we love like instant gratification, which is similar to the smoking. So all of a sudden we were taught, and culturally our culture sort of shifted to like this. If a doctor prescribes a pill, it must be okay. Right. And all of a sudden you can take a pill and everything gets better. But we weren't addressing the root causes of what would be causing depression, pain, etc., in the first place. So the pills just took over, and then that was sort of at the onset of like the OxyContin, introduction to that for pain management, and nobody really knew what it was going to do. Right.
And that's really true of even the doctors, because they were sold false. They were given false information, maybe purposely, maybe not so. But they, just because of my previous chapter of my life, I know a bit about this. Is it was going to help with pain, but it was also going to reduce medical costs.
Yes.
Instead of surgery to take care of some of the pain issues, just give the person a pill, and it would take care of. And so one of the first things that happened, some of the first people to become addicts, I believe, from this form were doctors and nurses.
Absolutely.
Because, they really believed. And so yes, they were doing something wrong, but they, we had a very esteemed doctor here,
right,
who went from a esteemed doctor, and this has been very public, to an addict, to losing his license, to then becoming a heroin user. And I've tried to get him. I've tried to get him to, even though it became very public because there was a jail sentence involved, but he's totally redeemed himself, not as a doctor, and he has such a great story to tell, but he's tried to put that behind him. But so even doctors were, in the early days, were kind of oblivious to what was going on.
Yes. So I will say that there is a very good TV series, if anybody is curious to really understand what's gone on. It's called Dope Sick. It's on Hulu, and it's very good. It really does it. What's what I think is important for people to understand about the opioid epidemic, especially, is that like a lot of people became addicted and then became heroin users, or IV users as a result of this very culturally acceptable addiction to a pill. But it takes you down this slippery slope, and like with any kind of addiction, drinking too, um, you don't see that it's happening. There's so much denial, and you're just in it, and you're trying to maintain your life. You're trying to maintain your relationships. You're trying to figure out, how to deal with the pain that you have, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain, or now it's an addiction and it's driving you. And until it's really bad, the denial keeps you lying to yourself that you can handle all of this. And then also when you add stigma and shame on top, people really end up suffering in silence, and they think like, I'm a smart person, I got here, I can get myself out of this. I don't need to tell anybody, I'm going to do it on my own. And I think what's really important about what we do at Journey to Recovery is that we are there to say like, hey, for one thing, you really can't do it alone. And for another thing is, you don't have to do it alone, and you shouldn't put yourself through the trauma and suffering of trying to do it silently and alone. It's a lot easier, safer, and faster to reach out and get some help and really get on a path that's going to save your life.
And that path looks different to different people, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And I think that's what's important about what's happening in the world of recovery today. That not just in terms of what we do at Journey to Recovery, but recovery used to be sort of very prescriptive. There was like, you could drink or you could not drink. You could do drugs, you could not do drugs. You could go to 12-step, you can, and that's sort of what there was available. And now we're finding out that everybody has their own individualized path to recovery. And what is recovery? So recovery isn't, well, I used to drink and I don't anymore. Recovery is, I don't drink because I don't have to drink, because I don't want to drink, because I fixed the things in my life that were driving me to that place of hopelessness.
Right.
I'm not a hopeless person anymore. I'm a person who loves myself. I realize that I'm not terrible, that I'm not just this, useless drunk. That's one of the most beautiful things that we see at the center, is when people come in, especially here. Like, this is a small community. Everybody knows everybody. You really can't make a move without somebody talking about it. And so many people feel like they're walking around with these big like scarlet letters on their forehead, like you should just say drunk or addict or something. And so for people to come in and start to realize that, for one thing, what other people think doesn't matter, and being driven by what other people think keeps you in that place of like fear and hopelessness. And once you start to change and truly heal yourself, you do like yourself, and then your perception of yourself changes. And then as your life improves, the way that people see you changes too.
And I've heard alcohol is one of those drugs, it is a drug, is one of those drugs that you actually have to repeatedly explain to people why you don't drink.
Right.
Is you don't get that with almost anything else. But if like I don't deny I'm an unabashed fan of having of exploring microbrews, only one or two at a time. Mm-hmm. But when I run into somebody who doesn't drink, I actually commend them. I don't have I will say I don't have a problem with alcohol, right. But I enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I enjoy the exploring the microbrews, but
you can.
Yeah. But a lot of times people get quizzed. Like when you run into somebody, if you say you don't drink, like I have one son who's 37, never tasted alcohol. I bet you he's had to explain himself more than once. But whereas you don't have to explain yourself why you don't use heroin, but
Right.
alcohol, people just they feel comfortable saying, well, why don't you drink?
Yeah. Drinking is so acceptable in our culture, and especially, what we've seen over the last couple of years with COVID. So when COVID first started and we all went on lockdown, you go on Facebook and it's like funny. Like, oh my gosh, it's only noon. Well, I guess it's time to start drinking. And you're home with the kids again. Oh, are you going crazy? Have a drink.
Yeah.
And I think that we had sort of this like funny view of it, as like a great way to cope with COVID, and it was a very dangerous way for many people. And it has caused a lot of pain and a lot of suffering and a lot of death, and a lot of destruction, sort of.
I probably, maybe my view isn't correct because, you know, my now grown kids, they either don't drink or they're very responsible. But I run into, it seems like far more young people don't don't drink alcohol. We hear so much negative, but I don't remember. I don't, and I know I'm a few years older than you, but it seemed to me that alcohol consumption, just maybe it was just because I hung out with drunks. I don't know. No, it doesn't seem like young people, are choosing to drink as much as our generation did.
I don't think that's true.
Really,
I think that
as I said, it's maybe just my view of the people that surround me.
I think that there's a couple things going on. I think that we do have generational alcoholism here in the Northeast Kingdom. I think that it's like very common for people to drink, as kids become teenagers. I think it's really important for parents to provide the information and the boundaries around, the dangers of drinking. But again, I think that what we have to be teaching our youth is, moderation. Parents should be, if you are someone like you who can have a drink or two, and it's not going to cause you to just drink to oblivion, or like if you drink you can't stop. There's people who like it's all or nothing.
Right.
And that's dangerous behavior, and you don't want to teach that to your kids. But if you're a person who can have a drink here and there, I think it's important for parents to name that, like to say it, because you want your children to learn how to be moderate. You don't want your kids to be going out and drinking and partying and thinking that that's normal.
Right.
And I think that here, it's especially with COVID, it's sort of like easy for kids to get a little out of control with it, especially with many parents who do drink. But I also do think that there are some kids who are seeing, they don't want to be the way that their parents have raised them. They don't want to be raised in an alcoholic home. They want to have something different or better.
Well, I grew up in a family where I think my parents had the same bottle of liquor our entire growing up years. To this day, once we got older, my father became a real boozer, and I think maybe he's had like 12, and in other words,
Yeah, like he doesn't drink.
We will
Yeah.
have him. He'll have a drink with us, but and then, my mother, who's now gone, I don't know if I ever saw her even finish a drink.
I think that living here in the Northeast Kingdom is sometimes very hard. I don't really know what it's like to live in other places too much. I mean, I've lived around the country, but raising kids here in the Northeast Kingdom is a hard job. And there's, especially like with the rising cost of fuel, and cars break, and we have just like the cost of food and housing, everything is really stressful, and so it's easy for parents to slip into that survival crisis mode. And when you're in survival crisis mode, you need a break, and it's really easy to take a break by having a drink or a whole bunch. And what we say to the people who come to us at the center is like, we have to get your life manageable, like, so that you're not pushed to that point of just so much stress that you just need to check out. And if you are somebody who's watching this right now and you know that you're drinking too much and you can't stop, if you can't stop for yourself, try and reach out and get some help from us so that you can at least stop for your kids, or you can get this under control, because your kids are watching you and they're learning how to cope with hard things. And so if your way of coping with hard things is by using a substance to check out, your kids are going to grow up and do that too. But I will say that it is possible for not everyone, some people, to actually get a handle on their substance use, their drinking, that once you really manage the underlying root causes, it's about making your life manageable. And so that's what recovery is.
Do you think some people can, I know there's been discussion over the years, is whether all alcoholics really need to totally abstain if they are able to, or whether some of them can go back to moderation.
We do see that there are people who can return to moderation, but it takes therapy. It takes not only peer support from us, but it takes clinical support. Like you're learning, because addiction, any kind of substance use, is related to trauma and coping skills. It's related to some things that are happening in your life that's making life really hard.
I grew up with people in the neighborhood, a family, and they're wonderful human beings. But the idea of, they'll even say the idea of one beer is they can't do it.
Yeah.
And so some of them have chosen not to drink.
And that's a good choice for them.
It seems like, because I'm not one of those people. I can have just one or two, but I do have friends who will admit they have, they've never, they wouldn't call themselves alcoholics, but because they choose not to drink, just simply because they know there's no such thing as one beer.
And the thing is that, like, one thing that our culture doesn't tell us is there's a million things to do that are super fun that have nothing to do with drinking. Like we don't have to do that. Right. And I mean, what we're really looking for is joy and connection.
Right.
That's the underlying piece that people are looking for, is that. And like lots of times if you're not a confident young person, you have a couple drinks, all of a sudden you feel like you can talk to girls or boys or whatever, and it leads into this problematic behavior. But the truth is, what you really want is to be that confident person. Right. And once you learn how to do that, you don't really need to be drinking to have fun. There's a million things to do that don't include that. And that's a different conversation than like the opioid stuff.
We could have a whole series.
Yes.
It's hard to believe we only have 5 minutes left.
Oh my gosh.
How can people contact?
Yes. So you can contact us multiple different ways. And for one, you can always call, and it's 802-624-4156. There is a emergency number on that number if you need someone after hours. You can go to our website, which is www.jtr-cc.org. You can find us on Facebook, Journey to Recovery. You can find us on Instagram, Journey to Recovery. You can message Journey to Recovery on Facebook or Instagram, and someone will get back in touch with you right away. You can go to the hospital, and if you need us, the hospital will page us 24/7, 365. Like, we are available. If you need to talk to a recovery coach, you go to the ER and you ask them to page us. Is
there any fee for your services?
No. We are a We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we are always taking donations on our website. We do get government funding, state and federal funding that we work hard and apply for. But we're all nonprofits, so you come to the center. There is no cost to you. We are there, and we can support you.
You ought to consider in the coming months seeing if you have 2 or 3 people who would like to come on with you who you've helped and maybe who are helping you now.
Yeah, we can absolutely.
Because I think that's the real way. Like I've had you on my show before talking about this, but then I've had recovering addicts, and I've actually had 2 cases where I've had people come up to me in the store, and like I had this couple, and they just came up to me. They said we use heroines, we're addicts, but we want to thank you for giving people a voice, because someday we want to be, because and which I thought was really great that they didn't say like, oh no, we don't have an issue. They said we have an issue, but by giving other people a voice, you give us hope. And
I think that's what people need to hear. Like, if you are actively addicted to any kind of opioid and it is ruling your life, and you feel like you've messed up everything, you feel like you've burned every bridge, you feel like you can't stop, like, it's okay. Like, please don't feel like all is lost. You can come talk to us.
And from knowing addicts, there is no stereotypical addict. A lot of people have this view of what an addict looks like.
Right.
And no, it is actually, some of the people listening and watching probably have no idea the people in their lives that they have no idea what their lives are leading.
Substance use touches every single one of us. I don't care who you are. You know someone, you are someone. We are all struggling with this. There is not one type of person. So I do believe that we all need to go through our lives compassionately, without judgment. If you see someone you think is like a certain, how could they be so selfish, and how could they make these choices? How could they lose their kids? You know what? Please just don't think of it that way. It's not that simple. It's not that easy. Yeah. We need to wrap around people and help them, not isolate them and judge them.
I love people. I love to explore topics. So I have sat right down with, like, I actually know so much about, like, even the opiate trade around here, not because I'm involved, but because I'll even ask people, so tell me, how does this all work? And they'll tell me how it works. And just because I want to know, because I think knowledge, because I think a lot of times if you don't have addiction, especially close to you, whether it be alcohol addiction or whether it be opiate addiction, you don't really think about it. You don't think about it. You don't care about it.
Yes. And I think it is really easy to get just turned around. You take a Percocet, and then all of a sudden you're addicted to Percocet, and you're finding yourself at Maple Fields. It's really dangerous. And that was the last thing I wanted to be able to say, is that around here, or anywhere, it's really easy to make pills. You can press them. They look absolutely legit.
Really?
It's scary, and
I haven't heard that.
It's
one.
very, very easy to make pills, and what people are doing is they're putting fentanyl in these pills. There's fentanyl in cocaine. There's fentanyl in heroin. Actually, there's hardly any real heroin. It's all fentanyl, and so people are dying. And so, like, even if you are a recreational user, like, if you think that you just can party here and there, like, please don't, because fentanyl is killing people. It's a serious problem. People are not only dying, they're becoming addicted. The high is so fast and short, and then you are so sick so quickly that it just keeps you on this run. Right. And and then you need more and more and more and more, and it's very deadly. So please be careful.
Well, thank you for coming on the show. yet again. And this is a very, it sounds like you're doing a great job over there. And I really hope we're starting to bend the curve, as they say, with this addiction. Because it's, if people don't think they have an addict in their life, somewhere, they probably just don't know they do, because now, it's pretty common.
Yeah, and there is help, and it's okay to ask for help. In fact, it's the scariest, best thing that anybody can do is ask for help. We also have Narcan, and we can teach people how to use it. If you need Narcan, you can get it without telling us who you are. It's free. We just want people to be safe.
Okay, thank you for coming on. And
Thanks for having me.
I know you'll be here again.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.